The HOA board president's voice carried across the packed community center as she pointed at the 58-year-old man sitting alone in the back row. "Mr. Rodriguez, your unkempt yard and that eyesore of a vehicle are bringing down our entire neighborhood's property values." Maria Santos shuffled through her complaint folder while other homeowners turned to stare at Miguel Rodriguez, whose calloused hands gripped his worn baseball cap. None of them noticed the small purple ribbon pinned inside the cap's band, faded. From years of careful handling. What happens when this community discovers who Miguel really is will shock you to your core. If you believe every veteran deserves respect regardless of their circumstances, smash that subscribe button and tell me in the comments, have you ever seen someone judged unfairly because of appearances? This story will change how you see your neighbors forever. The HOA board president's voice carried across the packed community center as she pointed at the 58-year-old man sitting alone in the back row. "Mr. Rodriguez, your unkempt yard and that eyesore of a vehicle are bringing down our entire neighborhood's property values." Maria Santos shuffled through her complaint folder while other homeowners turned to stare at Miguel Rodriguez, whose calloused hands gripped his worn baseball cap. None of them noticed the small purple ribbon pinned inside the cap's band, faded. From years of careful handling. What happens when this community discovers who Miguel really is will shock you to your core. If you believe every veteran deserves respect regardless of their circumstances, smash that subscribe button and tell me in the comments, have you ever seen someone judged unfairly because of appearances? This story will change how you see your neighbors forever. Miguel had moved to Sunset Ridge Estates 8 months ago, using his disability benefits to make a down payment on the small 2-bedroom house at the end of Maple Street. It was the first home he had owned in 15 years, and he was proud of it despite its modest size and his limited budget for maintenance. The problem started almost immediately. His 1998 Honda Civic had a dented bumper and rust spots that he couldn't afford to fix. His lawnmower had broken down 3 weeks after moving in, and replacing it meant choosing between the mower or his medication for chronic pain. He chose the medication. Tonight's emergency HOA meeting had been called specifically because of the mounting complaints about his property. Miguel sat quietly in the back, hoping to avoid attention. But Maria Santos had other plans. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maria announced to the room of about 40 homeowners, "we have a serious problem that affects all of us. Some residents seem to think our community standards don't apply to them." She clicked through photos on her laptop, projecting them onto the screen at the front of the room. The first image showed Miguel's front yard, where the grass had grown longer than the HOA's strict 4-inch maximum height requirement. "This is what drives property values down," Maria continued, her voice growing more animated. "When one homeowner decides they're above the rules, it affects everyone's investment." Miguel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had tried to explain to Maria in previous conversations that he was working on solutions, but she had made it clear she wasn't interested in explanations, and this, Maria said, clicking to the next slide, "is completely unacceptable." The image showed Miguel's Honda parked in his driveway. The car was clean but clearly old, with visible wear and the dented rear bumper from a minor accident years earlier. "Our CC and RS clearly state that all vehicles parked in driveways must be in good repair and appearance," Maria read from a printed document. "This eyesore violates multiple provisions of our community standards." A woman in the third row raised her hand. "What has the board done to address this?" "We've sent multiple violation notices," Maria replied. "Mr. Rodriguez has been given ample opportunity to correct these issues, but he continues to ignore our community standards." Miguel started to stand, wanting to explain, but Maria's next words stopped him cold. "Frankly," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room, "I'm not sure this individual has the financial means to maintain a home in our community." Perhaps he would be more comfortable in a less upscale neighborhood. The room fell silent for a moment. Several people nodded in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable with Maria's blunt assessment. "That's not fair," said a younger woman near the front. "Maybe there are circumstances we don't know about." "What circumstances could justify bringing down everyone else's property values?" replied an older man. "We all have to follow the same rules." Miguel finally stood up, his legs stiff from old injuries. His voice was quiet but steady when he spoke. Ma single quotes him. "I understand your concerns about the community standards. I'm working on solutions for both the yard and the car. I just need a little more time." Time? Maria laughed harshly. "Mr. Rodriguez, you've had 8 months. How much more time do you need?" "I'm on a fixed income," Miguel explained, his voice growing stronger. "I have to prioritize certain expenses over others." "Then maybe you shouldn't have bought a house you can't afford to maintain." Maria shot back. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Our community has standards for a reason." The room erupted in murmurs and side conversations. Some residents were nodding along with Maria's harsh assessment, while others looked increasingly uncomfortable with the confrontation. "Look," said a man in an expensive suit from the middle of the room. "I didn't buy a house here to watch my investment lose value because someone can't afford basic maintenance." Miguel's hands clenched into fists at his sides, but his voice remained controlled. "I understand everyone's concerns. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's property values. This house means everything to me." Maria shuffled through her papers again. "Mr. Rodriguez, according to our records, you don't work. You're home all day, surely. You can find time to cut your grass." "I have health issues that make physical labor difficult," Miguel replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Health issues?" Maria's tone was skeptical. "You look perfectly capable to me." "What kind of health issues?" "Prevent someone from basic yard maintenance?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Miguel's jaw tightened, and for a moment it looked like he might not answer at all. "I have chronic pain and mobility issues from old injuries," he said finally. "What kind of injuries?" pressed the man in the expensive suit. "Work-related?" "Military-related." Miguel answered quietly. The mood in the room shifted slightly. A few people sat up straighter, but Maria seemed determined to press forward. "Well, military or not, the rules apply to everyone equally," she said. "We can't make exceptions based on personal circumstances, or everyone will want special treatment." An elderly man near the front row cleared his throat. He was wearing a navy baseball cap and looked to be in his 70s. "Excuse me," he said, standing slowly. "What branch of the military?" Miguel looked at him with surprise. "Army, sir. 1st Cavalry Division." "When did you serve?" 2 tours in Iraq," Miguel replied. 2003 to 2005, then 2007 to 2009. The older man nodded slowly. "My name is Frank Morrison. I served in Vietnam with the Navy." "What was your MOS?" "Combat engineer," Miguel answered. "Route clearance." The room had gone completely quiet. Even Maria had stopped shuffling her papers. Frank Morrison's expression grew. "Serious route clearance, IEDs?" Miguel nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, sir. That's how I got hurt." Frank turned to address the room, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "For those of you who don't understand what this man just told you," he said, "route clearance is one of the most dangerous jobs in the military. These soldiers drive ahead of convoys to find and disable improvised explosive devices. They save lives by putting themselves directly in harm's way." Maria shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "That's all very admirable, but it doesn't change our community standards." Frank ignored her and kept his attention focused on Miguel. "How many Purple Hearts?" Miguel's voice was barely audible. Two Purple Hearts," Frank repeated, turning back to the room. "This man was wounded twice serving our country, and you're complaining because his grass is too long?" There was a long moment of uncomfortable silence before a woman in the middle section spoke up. "We didn't know," she said softly. "Mr. Rodriguez, why didn't you tell us you were a veteran?" Miguel shrugged, looking down at his worn boots. "It's not something I talk about much. And it doesn't change the fact that my yard doesn't meet the standards." "The hell it doesn't," Frank Morrison said firmly. "Son, you've given more for this country than most of these people ever will. The least they can do is show you some basic respect." Maria cleared her throat, trying to regain control of the meeting. "Gentlemen, I appreciate Mr. Rodriguez's service, but we still have community standards to maintain." Frank Morrison turned to stare at her with an intensity that made her take a step backward. "Ma'am," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "this man spent years getting blown up by roadside bombs. So you could sit here safely in your community center complaining about grass height. Maybe you should reconsider your priorities." The room erupted in heated conversation. Some residents were arguing with each other. Others were approaching Miguel to shake his hand and apologize. The meeting had completely gotten away from Maria's control. A middle-aged woman made her way through the crowd to where Miguel was standing. She introduced herself as Janet Chun, a real estate agent who lived 2 streets over. "Mr. Rodriguez," she said, "I want to apologize for how you've been treated. This is not what our community should be about." Miguel nodded gratefully, but didn't trust himself to speak. Janet continued, "I also want you to know that my husband and I would be happy to help with your yard work until you can get back on your feet." No strings attached. Other residents began offering help as well. Someone volunteered to loan Miguel a lawnmower. Another offered to help fix his car's bumper. A retired contractor said he would donate materials and labor to help with any needed home repairs. Maria stood at the front of the room, watching her carefully planned meeting dissolve into what looked more like a community organizing session. She tried several times to restore order, but it was clear that the momentum had shifted completely away from her. Frank Morrison approached Miguel and extended his hand. "Son," he said, "I want to thank you for your service. And I want to apologize for how you've been treated here." Miguel shook his hand, his eyes filling with tears he had been holding back for months. "There's something else," Frank continued. "I'm a member of the local VFW post. We have programs that might be able to help you with some of these expenses. Would you be interested in learning more?" Miguel nodded, not trusting his voice. The meeting officially ended without any resolutions being passed about Miguel's property. Instead, it ended with neighbors exchanging phone numbers and making plans to help a fellow community member who had given so much for his country. Over the following weeks, Miguel's situation improved dramatically. His lawn was professionally landscaped by volunteers from the community. His car was repaired free of charge by a local veteran-owned auto shop. Most importantly, he was connected with VA benefits he hadn't known he was eligible for, including assistance with home maintenance and medical care. Maria Santos quietly resigned from the HOA board a month later, citing personal reasons. New board, led by Frank Morrison and Janet Chen, instituted new policies focusing on community support rather than punishment for violations. Miguel's house became a gathering place for neighborhood veterans. They met every Saturday morning to share coffee and stories, and to help each other navigate the challenges of civilian life after military service. 6 months after that confrontational meeting, Miguel stood in his beautifully maintained front yard, watching neighborhood kids play on the sidewalk. His grass was perfectly trimmed, his driveway was freshly sealed, and his Honda had been replaced with a newer model through a veteran car donation program. But more than the physical improvements, Miguel had found something he hadn't expected when he moved to Sunset Ridge Estates. He had found a community that, once they understood who he was and what he had sacrificed, embraced him as family. The small purple ribbon was still pinned inside his baseball cap, but now he wore the cap proudly when he walked through his neighborhood. And when new residents moved in, Miguel was always among the first to welcome them. making sure they knew that in this community, everyone's story mattered.